All right, we want to welcome you in to Coronavirus Inside the Arizona Numbers. It is January 26, 2021. So much to talk about today, not only because we weren't here with you yesterday, but because this sort of officially marks 1 year on all of this, Garrett, as we saw our first case here in Arizona, our first publicly stated case. Of course, the test would have been taken on the 22nd, a few days back. So this was a year ago today was the day we first learned that coronavirus specifically was here inside the state of Arizona. So we count that as one, and now we're up to 25 million across the U.S. and here in Arizona, 732,000. So what a year it has been. We're going to get to the numbers here, and we'll try to get to some of your comments and questions as well. We got through a lot of those questions on Friday, and I'm hoping we can get to even more this week. So, all right, Garrett, first of all, we start where we always do on that summary page.
Yep, let's go. So where we are in this sort of 1 year anniversary of reporting, 732,643 cases. Today, 4,748 reported. And that's, let me just go back really quick. Number of deaths, 12,448 deaths in total so far. 4,748 cases reported with new deaths being 209. So what is that technically? That is where we are still at a week over week decline of about 4%. So basically we're level from last week as of right now. And that's in the number of cases. Now the number of deaths is a different story. We are at a sort of a high for deaths. It's at 168 right now. That's the third highest I believe we've had for 7-day death reporting. And so basically, and we kind of told you that we would expect this. We'd be seeing cases go down, but deaths would continue to linger on an upward trajectory for a little longer. And that's where we are right now. It does appear right now that our cases will continue to fall. All the modeling suggests that the hospitalizations are falling, but we do have at least another week or two of higher deaths until that will begin to fall as well.
Is that not unlike what you're seeing across the country too? Is it pretty much all states are starting to fall in this case?
Correct. Yeah, we're seeing that pretty much everywhere. If you look at sort of the, and we'll look at this a little later, the 91 Debunk or any of the numbers that are showing, the normalized cases across typical jurisdictions. The U.S. is experiencing its fastest fall right now that they ever have so far, and that could be a combination of things. I do have to point out that when we rejoined the World Health Organization, they had a recommendation to change the magnification of the cases, the PCR tests, and so we also may not be detecting cases for extremely mild COVID-19.
Exposures or cases,
because these people, so we may not be we may not be detecting those anymore. Someone who had the virus, a month ago, who goes in right now, we may not be detecting them. As far as the vaccine is concerned, it does have a little bit of an element to it, Michelle, but it's not very much because when you really look at the data, and let me see if I can go there really quick. As far as how many we have all across the country, I'm going to go.
As you're pulling that up, Garrett, as you're pulling up the numbers across the country, we are about, tomorrow we will officially hit 500,000 vaccinations here in the state of Arizona. Remember, we have more than 7 million people, so we still have a long way to go, but we're at about 486,000 Arizona vaccinations so far. That is not a complete set. That is just people getting their first dose, but it kind of gives you some perspective on how long this will take to get everybody vaccinated. And across the country, Garrett?
Yeah, I was pulling it up. Sorry about that. It took me
That's okay.
To find the correct. So what we have here is 44 million doses have been distributed throughout the entire U.S., but really the number that is the most important is this right here. 3.5 million have received their second dose. So, Michelle, what that means is that while we've had 44 million Americans, distributed, 23 million have been administered. However, only 3 million, so less than 1% of the population right now has full immunity. So does this have anything to do with it? Probably not, no.
One of the hopeful things is that when this Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and they're finishing up everything on it, should be finished by next week, then head over to the FDA for approval. That is one of the vaccinations that is a single dose. So that's going to cut down on that
Correct.
second dose that's going to be needed out there. Obviously, still more time on that. We also want to update you on some developing news that just came out a few minutes ago. Biden was giving an update, President Biden giving an update, and we're learning now, and this will change how you sign up for your vaccination, because we're learning that he's aiming to give states 3 weeks notice of the amount of vaccine they're going to be receiving. To put this in perspective, Arizona only knew 1 week out what number of vaccines were headed into the state. Makes it very hard to get everybody signed up in that time. So now all states will have 3 week notice to the amount of vaccinations that's arriving there. He's also increasing the amount from 8.6 million doses each week up to 10 million doses. And then they've ordered 200 million more overall. Those are not in yet. Those are just on order through the companies. And those should be showing up to states by this summer. So that's the push to sort of make some changes. So we're really seeing the distribution ramped up, and that more people are able to get out there, drive through, and get their vaccination. Oh, Margaret's saying negative test. Good news. She was updating us. She wasn't feeling well last week and had to go get a test. So really good news on that. And hopefully your daughter's been not sick with anything through this. So good news. Okay. And Garrett, how are you feeling in all this? You're what, 14 days out from a test? Oh, and look, Jade's asking.
Yeah, Jade, thank you. I'm at day 15 with no symptoms for about 4 days. So
Okay.
I'm clear at this point. My wife is probably clear at this point as well. She's at, I think, day 12 or day 13. So and her symptoms are kind of here and there, but still a fairly mild case. And so far, no one else in the family has exhibited anything. So.
Oh, that's good. Some really good news there. All right. Well, we're glad you're feeling better. Hopefully you're not going too stir crazy at home when you're having to quarantine there and hang out.
It's too cold to do anything anyway.
Yeah, true. Very true. All right, back to some of the numbers then. When we're looking at these, the number of deaths that we're experiencing here in Arizona, we're thinking of all of those families, because it's more than 12,000 families here in Arizona who are going through this disproportionate loss in all of this. While everybody can complain about everything else, these are the families that are truly suffering a loss. When we look at those numbers and we look at the week-to-week numbers, Garrett, it helps to give us a better idea how much longer we're going to be in this. Obviously, we've been told that January would be the worst. It was, in fact, the deadliest month of the pandemic across the United States. But how do things look in Arizona, and how much longer would we expect these numbers to be high? Is there any way to tell?
So it does appear that we're not going to see much change in that January 3rd, 884 deaths per week. We may have a couple more added on to that, but it's not going to go into the thousands. So it doesn't look like Arizona is going to get to the point where it's seeing 1,000 COVID deaths a week. And as you can see, this next week, January 10th, there's still a little bit of movement we're going to see on this. It'll probably get to about 800 or so. But I think at this point, the curve is going to reflect what we're already seeing. We're seeing this upward curve. You can see it here as well in the last one, how it shot up very quickly and then gradually went down, but still pretty aggressively down, just not with the same exponent. And we're probably going to see that same thing where we'll see it go down a little more gradually. But I think at this point, we are in the midst of that downturn. We should start seeing that now.
Yeah. And let's get to our hospitalizations too. There's some better numbers in all of those. You gave us a hint that this was coming when you started to see just, little ticks down in the numbers, and it's looking like those are panning out overall.
Correct. So right now we are about ICU beds are about 13% down from their peak 15 days ago. And inpatient hospitalizations are down about 17% from their peak. So we can see this too. We can actually see a little more headroom now. We're at 91% for ICU instead of 93. And we're starting to see them, there was a lot of we were talking about the backlog that happens, especially in the ICU. So, they're still admitting patients into the ICU. When we see the inpatient, we can see it's a little better situation here. The inpatient headroom's at about 90%. I would expect it to stay around that for the foreseeable future. But you can see that it's coming to the point where the non-COVID patients are starting to they're not at 50% by any means, but they're getting close to becoming the majority of patients in Arizona now. And probably within the next 2 weeks, that's going to occur. Just to show you what I'm talking about when we're talking about why our deaths are going to continue. So inpatient numbers, we see a very precipitous decline. ICU beds we see as not as precipitous, but still a decline. But let's look at some of these others. We see another one in ventilators is going down. The two that I'm concerned about, this one I'm concerned about, this is the intubations. You can see that this actually, there was an increase here. To me, that suggests that, we're going to have a couple more days of, unfortunately, some deaths that are coming from the ICU, because most people who do get a percentage of people who get intubated, I think right now it's up to 50, 60%, are unfortunately pass away from COVID-19. And then and some good news as well, the emergency room, that's down to 1734 right now. And I don't think it's been there since early December. So there is some good news pretty much everywhere in all this data right now. And it should, and with the exception of the deaths, unfortunately, where like I said, we'll see it for another week or two. As long as everything sort of stays on this trajectory, things are going to look really good in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And we hope that that's the case for most states across the country. I just saw David's comment sort of echoing that. Arizona is flattening like so many other states. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Boy, it feels like it's been such a long time. And it really has. I mean, 1 year, like we were talking about, the first case reported on 1/22, so January 22nd of 2020 at that point. That was when the test was taken, reported out today on the 26th. And I wonder in the comments if many of you who are here will share what your thought was, or when you first remember hearing that a case was here in Arizona. I saw somebody posting, wasn't it an ASU student? That's correct. And that first case coming on, a lot of breaking news, actually. A lot of people were pulled to their TVs just because of the news of Kobe Bryant 1 year ago. And then to also hear that we had a COVID case here in Arizona, it was a lot to take in over that time. And I feel like people heard the news at that point because they were all pulled to the TV because of that Kobe story as well. Amber writes, my really close friend had her husband die on Sunday. He was under 30. She's a widow at 28. Amber, first of all, if you can pass along our condolences to your friend. That's exactly who I'm talking about, the 12,000 Arizonans who've experienced this disproportionately to others. 30, under 30 is so young though, Garrett. That is, although it's happening, it's still a rare case to experience that at such a young age.
It is rare. It does happen. We do have some data. We don't have numbers for we only have 20 to 44 for deaths, but let's look at that really quick. When we look at the COVID age deaths by age group, we can see, in fact, the 20 under actually went up today too. So someone under 20 passed away from COVID-19 very recently. It's at 21 now. And then that age group of the under 30, that's about 549 right now. Very low numbers. It's under 1%, but still, as we talk about constantly, every death is tragic. So
yeah, it's someone.
Exactly. It's somebody. It's not just a number. And that's something, it's difficult, especially early on in this pandemic. It was difficult for me to reconcile with that. Because it hits you after a while,
Yeah. And some of you are sharing your thoughts on that. Cindy's writing, I remember being in disbelief and thought that this would pass. We'd all be fine. But a year later, totally different thoughts about COVID. And then I saw another one that just went by and my mouse is so far away. Let me see if I can scroll back. I appreciate all of you sharing your thoughts on it too. Anita writes, I honestly never thought it would be this bad. Yeah, it's incredible when you look back year to year on this. Thank you for sharing. I'm seeing more comments and I'll try to get to more of them. But Garrett, on this page that you're on right now, I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the other numbers there, because we're seeing a sort of a disproportionate number between men and women losing their lives to this. Women, it looks like 42% and men as high as almost 60%.
Yeah, this is something that is a phenomena of COVID-19. It does happen pretty much everywhere where when you look at the case numbers themselves, there are more women that get COVID-19 than men. But hospitalizations, it starts to equal out where there's about equal numbers of men and women in the hospitals. But then when it comes to deaths, the male gender does they unfortunately do die at a higher rate than women. It's 58% to 42%. That's pretty much, like I said, anywhere you look in the country, you'll find that. And really, they've been working on this since the very beginning. I remember reading articles on why this could be the case even when this thing was pretty much just in Wuhan, China, as to why this could be the case. And, there's theories, speculations on it's because, women are more willing and typically will go to the a healthcare provider earlier than a man does. In some places, men tend to smoke more than women, and just they're trying to figure out if it's just a quality of life or health issue, how each person sort of takes care of their health, if that's one of the reasons why, or if there's a gene or something else that actually is triggered in men that makes it a worse disease.
And like you said, remember when we were seeing higher numbers in other countries, and they were trying to correlate and see if there was anything in relation to the genders and those lost at that time. But now we have so much more data than we had, a year ago or even 6 months ago. So, Garrett, I saw a question earlier from somebody trying to manage all three columns at once here. And they were asking about the hospitalizations among that under 20 group. Recently, that made a few more headlines. Our reporters were working on some of that as well, because Banner Health had said they were seeing about 6 times the number of kids in the hospital than they were in even October. And there's Monica's question: what about kids and the hospitalization for children? So are we seeing more numbers just in our kids overall?
So we have now. That's a good question. Now, this is sort of I want to say my fault here. I was not tracking hospitalizations as much as I should have, so I don't have a really good linear timeline for the age groups that I can play with. I will say that it does appear that in more recently, if you look at sort of just a stepwise data every 2 months or so, that number of less than 20 has definitely increased as far as a percentage. Now, it's still extremely small, 1,385 off of what is it? 1 second, I don't have my sheet up, but if we just look at this and we say, 1,385 off of how many cases?
I think 114,000.
Yeah.
I checked yesterday.
Yeah, so it's under 1%. It's a little over 1% of that age group is hospitalized, which is a very low number compared to some of the other age groups. So.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a comment that we have very common, not just here, but across the internet, which is 99.9% recovery. Can you help Irene with some of that information? Because Irene, I don't know if that's you in the picture, but it's different for different age groups. So please don't think it's 99.9% recovery for everybody, because
let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah, I can pull. I haven't updated these numbers, but they're not going to change that much. So as far as that, so basically, this is what happens if you get COVID in a certain age group. Okay, so when you talk about that 99.9% recovery, that's assuming everybody's the same age and everybody has the same chance of getting COVID, and that's what the death rate is for everybody. Okay,
right.
So now let's break that down a little bit. Okay, say you get COVID. If you are over 65 and you get COVID, first of all, your hospitalization rate is 23.9%. So your 1 in 4 people of the age 65 and up are going to be hospitalized by COVID-19. The case fatality rate, which is basically just the number of, if you get COVID and you're of that age group, what's the chances that you die? And that's about 9% for that age group. And the hospital fatality rate. So this is the people those 24% of people of 65 and up that go to the hospital, what is their rate of fatality? And that's actually 40%. So these are things that you have to understand when you look at that 99.9% recovery rate. That's including everybody. And that means, okay, that's,
okay, Garrett, it's like saying me and my grandson have.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, we were both talking at the same time. I was saying to try to say a 99.9% recovery rate, or 99.7, as she changed in the comments. That's like saying me and my grandson together have a 99.9% recovery rate. You separate those two groups out, you're not in the same category as.
No, exactly, and that's exactly right. Taking the 99.9% recovery rate is the same thing as saying, it's essentially the same thing as your X chance of dying in a car crash. Just assuming that since everybody uses autos for the most part, the vast majority of the country gets into a car at some point, so there is a fatality rate of, what's your chance of dying in a car crash. That 99.9 recovery rate, but you can't say recovery because we don't know what the recovery looks like either. There's reports out that people that have no symptoms actually have long-term lung damage from this thing. So it can't be considered as a recovery. When you say recovery, you mean didn't die. That's really the way to define that. And okay, while that number, there may be some truth to that number in the raw sense, once you get to a certain age group and they get COVID, then your chances start to go down very quickly. And that's sort of what people have to understand when they sort of use that statistic that's a very basic statistic. It doesn't really tell any story at all. It's not telling what you want it to tell. You're trying to say this isn't a big deal. Well, so it might not be a big deal, but as far as for everybody, for the entire country, but neither is, a car crash. But you don't want a big person who gets into a car crash.
You don't want to be the one.
Yeah. It's not like a car crash's fatality rate is 80%, 10% of people are going to die in a car crash. So, it's basically using that same sort of statistic, and it's not a great statistic. You have to break it down and see how this impacts certain age groups.
Yeah. Michelle adds to the conversation saying, can you please dispel the statement? And hopefully we just did for you, Michelle. The coronavirus is 8 times more deadlier than the flu, and the flu conspiracy theories need to stop. They sure do. Like I said before, at this point, I don't even care what you call COVID. It can be a word we can't even say on TV. I don't care what you call it. We are experiencing a much higher number of deaths year over year.
Experiencing higher deaths. Exactly.
Yeah.
And people say, well, flu's gone. I was like, well, yeah, because we're all staying home. So of course we're not getting flu. That's sort of a consequence of COVID is that flu has gone down. It is cannibalizing it, but not in the same way that people are thinking it's cannibalizing it. That it's like for some reason they're taking flu cases and calling them COVID-19 cases. That's just not the case.
Yeah. All right. I do want to get to a few more of the numbers, and while we can celebrate that our numbers are starting to, at the very least, level off a bit for cases here in Arizona, county-wise, we've actually stepped up to number 2 in the nation. Now we're the 4th most populous county, so being at number 2 means we're trending higher if this is normalized for population. Our deaths we're still in 5th place, Maricopa County, for deaths. So just something to keep in perspective as we sort of ride out these next few weeks where these death numbers can still stay very high. And Kimberly's asking about some of the mutations. And we did just have some reporting in on one of the variants today. The Brazilian variant has now shown up in a case in Minnesota. So that just breaking this afternoon. And some of the other variants, as we were telling everybody, Garrett, are now measured on the CDC site. Yes. We've been helping people find that map so that you can stay updated on the numbers. A lot of mutations right around the state of Arizona. We have not officially had one yet here in Arizona.
I would be more concerned, honestly. Well, I'll show you the B117. This is the UK variant. I have to see if we have. I don't see any other variants except for B117. Only 293 cases. California, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. But I mean, if you're in Arizona, I would be more concerned with the variant that California might be having right now than sort of Brazil or UK, because that one's right next door. So
you're saying it because it could come here so much easier.
Yeah, so much faster. And we just simply don't know. We don't have tracking for that yet, so we don't know what it looks like. Now, as we said, right now things are going down. If for some reason we started seeing a change in trajectory, it would certainly stand to reason that that's because of some sort of variant that came here that is much more contagious than sort of a standard variant of COVID-19. So
you're saying if we started to see the case numbers tick up and no particular reason for that to happen right now, that would be probably a good indicator.
Really not much out there. I mean, let's face it. A lot of this is due to not just mask wearing, but also mobility. And I've got a mobility graph I can show you. And so, and we were in a situation in, with Halloween and then Thanksgiving and then Christmas where households were getting together and then, spreading it to each other, and then inside their household. So that did happen. That's just the way it is. Now, if we get to a variant that's actually more, someone who say just goes in using a cloth mask, and it's more likely that they can get it in a grocery store. Now, it's still likely that you can get it in a grocery store. That's where I believe I got it. But if it does happen, that could, cause these numbers to rise because people are still going to the grocery stores. They're not going to be going into households doing holiday parties or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, those sort of normal transactions, those mobile transactions that people do every day of just going to the grocery store, going to Target, going wherever, that if that starts to be an issue, then, we would see it in the data pretty quickly.
Yeah. We're seeing Donna weigh in watching right now. We all have COVID in my family. We're all at home. I'm sorry, Donna. I know so many people are going through this right now. Hopefully, you will have a quick and full recovery. If saying full key is key there, because as we just talked about, Garrett, recovered doesn't mean that much. Everybody's definition of recovery is different.
Yeah, we don't really know. That's why they don't publish a number. We will give an active case estimate of what may be a contagious case here. And that's about 80,000 to 200,000 people in Arizona are contagious with COVID-19. But that's pretty much it. I wouldn't dare give a recovery number or anything like that. We simply just don't know what those look like.
Yeah, different for everybody. Okay, there's going to be a lot of talk about schools tonight and tomorrow, and the CDC is saying that mask wearing coupled with social distancing, and we're talking strict mask wearing. It's not hanging off. It's strict mask wearing and social distancing. The CDC is saying that there is little spread in schools when those things are done. Now, they studied 17 schools in Wisconsin, and this was specific again. This was a multi-layered mask. This was not more than 20 students in class. This was no co-mixing of other classes and kids. It was, the group stuck together. And then if a child is sick or a sibling of a child is sick, the whole household stays home. So everybody stays home. That's when the CDC is saying they were seeing little spread in schools. We do have reporters on that this afternoon as well. So we'll have more reporting on what the CDC is saying today and what they're hoping to do for schools in the next 100 days to be able to get the kids back in schools. Right now, currently in the United States, half of all schools are still in virtual learning. They're not back to in-person learning yet. My kids included in that. They have not been able to be in school since March of last year. So it's been a full year of learning at home and working and doing it all. So I know so many of you are experiencing that as well. So Garrett, that's going to be the big talker today is what's going to happen with our schools, how quickly these vaccinations can get out, or these vaccines can get out, not vaccinations till they're in your arm, but how quickly this rollout can happen, and tracking some of those numbers as well. We talked about some of the vaccination numbers a little bit earlier, so we won't get into all of that again, but I do want to highlight one matter of business because so many people have reached out to us. We had a huge storm. If you're watching from somewhere else and not in Arizona, we had a huge winterish as Arizona can be, moved through yesterday, and it did cause a lot of lightning, and so they shut down our largest vaccination site here in Arizona. So that's the site over at State Farm Stadium. It was shut down for a while. So some people are reaching out to the newsroom saying, hey, I had an appointment, and because of the weather, I couldn't get over there. So what they're saying now is just show up still with your QR code and they'll work you into the mix. They'll work you into that line out there at State Farm Stadium, but you had to have an appointment. So make sure that is done if you're heading back over there. Okay, that brings us to a little bit of a talker. I saw some of the comments on your Twitter page, Garrett, about this, because this has everybody chatting. What do you do when you've opened vaccines and they have to be used and you don't have people who are set up for an appointment to distribute those to? What should happen with those? Is it better to just try to find somebody and just get it in somebody's arm, or throw it away? Would you rather see, and this is for everybody in the comments, would you rather see it tossed out, or would you rather see it, let's head out into the parking lot, see if anybody's over there, and we can give them, a vaccine? Exactly.
To sort of summarize it as well in my way. So before I get exactly to this, would you be willing, are you more wanting to see high-risk people that need the vaccine get the vaccine most, and no one's able to sort of get in there first that may not need it, they're in a low-risk group? Or would you rather allow that low-risk group to get the vaccine if there's vaccines available, because it might be a slow day? So, and they don't have enough, they don't have enough appointments, and there's just vaccines laying around. This is the poll that there was a bit of a talker on. Majority of voters prefer to prioritize higher risk groups when distributed coronavirus vaccines, even if it means some doses are left to expire. So people were asked, this was Data for Progress poll. It was a national poll of likely voters. And it is the two questions that people had to either agree or disagree with was, it is better to allow people in lower risk groups to get vaccinated early than it is for some doses of the vaccine to expire, even if it means some people will get to cut in line. Or it's better to ensure people in higher risk groups are vaccinated first than it is to allow some people to cut in line, even if it means some doses of the vaccine will expire. And as you can see, most Americans do say, the majority said, agreed with the latter statement, that they would ensure that the higher risk people are vaccinated first, than it is allow for people to cut in line. And that's what this says. Personally, as someone who's written poll questions before, I'm not a big fan of this poll. I think the use of the word cut in line sort of gets people riled up, and they say, I don't want anybody to cut in line. And that's the only thing they hear in that statement. When in reality, like you said, Katie, there is situations in which, especially the Pfizer vaccine, you have to use it within 6 hours after you open it. Mm-hmm. And if it's the end of the day at a hospital, and they still have vaccines lying around, either they go outside and they ask anybody who hasn't gotten a vaccine if they want a vaccine, or they throw them away. That's the only options.
Yeah, so it's interesting. As I presented that, everybody's saying, use it, use it, use it. And then as you read that and you hear those last words, cut in line, and no one likes a cutter, even in kindergarten, we don't like a cutter. So that's in our brain at 5. So then it's more difficult to get away from those last 3 words in that polling. So you're right. I would have asked the question a different way, and it might have skewed the poll results. It definitely skewed the results based on what we're seeing here. Everyone's saying, why waste it? Get it to somebody. What happened then is saying, okay, let's take this allotment to a long-term care facility. You go over to the long-term care facility, you get everybody there vaccinated, those who work there, those who live there, and then you walk out into the parking lot and there's just no one around. Yeah. You got to toss it at that point. Yeah. So yes, you've got this vulnerable population vaccinated, but you've got some left that literally there's just nobody around, and you end up having to throw it away.
You have to jab somebody in the next hour, because after that, it's done. You can't use it anymore. So it's like, what do you do? I see how some people would think that it's a problem that, you've got these young, healthy 20-somethings that are able to, go from hospital to hospital looking for these vaccines. Now, my understanding right now is that people aren't buying these vaccines, just so everyone knows. This isn't like a situation where there's a black market. I'm sure some of that is happening somewhere because it's a big country. But for the most part, this isn't like a black market thing where people are, they're offering these for sale. But if you're young and healthy, you're able to sort of chase this and get a vaccine early. And obviously, if you've got, kids at home, or you're older, or like you said, long-term care facility, you don't have those options. You basically have to wait until it comes to you. So I can see how that could frustrate people. But again, the problem is they have an hour to use it. And if there's no one to take the vaccine, they're going to throw them in the trash. Whereas if there's this young and healthy person saying, oh, I'll take it, then, they've got a vaccine,
Yeah.
They didn't waste it.
What we're hearing, and what they've tweeted out about State Farm Stadium, is in some cases, if there is a +1 in your car and they would like a vaccine, that there might be a chance that they could get one. Now, this does not mean that you should expect that that is going to happen to your car. I've heard of plenty of people that went through. It was only the person that was registered, and that's it. And I've heard of other cases where they're like, we have one, you could take it. And so this sort of creates the, is it morally right to then take it, or is, there's a lot of talking points in all of it, and I'm sure it'll be long discussed after all of this, but just something to think about, and interesting that they already did a poll on this. So we'll see. But go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna just follow up after you were done. I know some people were talking in the comments about vaccine deaths, people dying from the vaccine. And my understanding right now is I don't have any information on that. I believe you can have an allergic reaction to the vaccine, which would put someone in anaphylactic shock, which could be, fatal in some cases. But I don't think there's literally any situation, and I will look to see if there is, but I don't think there's any situations that they have documented in which somebody died
Yeah.
from the vaccine that wasn't an allergic reaction. Say it was something else other than an allergic reaction. Something else was triggered that caused a fatality. I don't know the answer to that. My understanding is it's almost zero, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We just have a few more minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to all the things today. We talked about schools. We talked about this new rollout.
Let's just do a flurry. We'll go to the RT really quick because we haven't done it.
Yeah.
Good news. We like good news, so we'll
It's
go with
green
that.
today.
Yes,
It's
it's
the
in the
rumor
green.
I heard.
We finally joined the green states. We're at 0.95. And if you look at our data today, that pretty much follows what we would see where as I talked about, we're pretty much level in our data today. So I was expecting to see a number that was pretty close to 1. So 0.95, pretty good. Can't complain about that number. It should continue to go down as time goes on. We should see it go to, in the 80s here soon. So hopefully we're going to, and then at some point, I don't know how this really works as far as seeing it go down to like in the 70s. That would be a pretty drastic drop in the RT number. I'm assuming that when it's dropping pretty quickly, it's going to go down to maybe 0.85 or something. Let's see what the lowest right now is on RT Live. It is 0.82. So we'll watch this to see, and that's in Georgia saying it's a 0.82. So we'll see how far this goes, see how really drastic these numbers can drop. And so that is our RT. Another thing I wanted to share today is Arizona is no longer the nation's hotspot so far.
Good news.
It's no longer the hotspot in the world. There's Portugal right on top of Arizona. So we're the second, pretty much one of the second. I think, let's see, Rhode Island might be the second. Let's see. Hold on. Let me check Rhode Island here. Nope. This is cases per day normalized by population. We are the second in that group. So it's Portugal first and then Arizona. When we look at just the states, here's the states. Here we are we are the top. Never mind. We weren't the top, but I guess Rhode Island went down because I checked today and we were, hold on. Let me refresh this just in case I have wrong data. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking at an old data. My apologies. I could have sworn I saw Rhode Island on top. So yeah, we are now the second. There's Rhode Island right ahead of us. Just something to consider. We're no longer number one. So yay, right?
Yeah, my gosh. I mean, it's embarrassing to hold that top spot for so long, and just there's nothing more to say about that. I mean, we're the highest in the world with 25 million of the 100. That's the other thing I needed to mention. We hit 100 million cases globally today. We have 25 million cases in the US. So we're now still tracking at 25% of the global cases, yet we only have 4% of the global population. So that's why we've been the worst in the world as far as the countries are, and then worst in the world as far as the states are, with Arizona's numbers in there. So many people are asking, why they didn't run the vaccine situation so differently. I ask the same thing. I know it'll be interesting to hear how they set this whole thing up, but I always say it should be like a Chick-fil-A. When you pull up, they're walking and they plug in your order. So your order would be here. Let's plug in your age. Let's plug in any other factors that you have. You do need to come with documentation, and here's what the documentation is. You don't have that info, you got to go out of line. Just like if you didn't have the credit card to pay for the Chick-fil-A, you got to go out of line. But then you're walking and you're signing up as they go, and then they just continue on through and get the shot. I've always thought we should have called in all those people to run that better, and we would have gotten through the line a lot early, because the sign up process has been so concerning for so many people. Yeah, there's going to be where you're going to have peak hours out there where people are showing up and they're having to wait 10 hours for a shot, but at least then they're showing up when works for them, instead of getting assigned 3 a.m. and then they're emailing us and saying, but I can't go there at 3 a.m. for whatever reason, because of age or driving conditions or things like that. So I don't know. It's interesting. Okay, so last few minutes left, Garrett. What other things are you going to be watching?
Well, I wanted to say once again, because someone said, oh, they don't mention the flu deaths. I'm looking at something. We had about 1,000 deaths from influenza and pneumonia in 2018 in Arizona. So just 1,000. We're at 12,000 now for COVID-19. So this is not the flu. It never was the flu, and stop thinking it is the flu. Sorry, Stella. It's just not the flu. So I'm mentioning it right now. 1.1K. So 1,100 deaths in Arizona in 2018.
And I want to remind everybody, when you're looking for that, you can find that on the Arizona Department of Health site. There's a pull down bar. Remember that the data is always reviewed. It comes out about 2 years later, but you can look at current numbers. They're just not fully investigated and solidified yet. They're sort of like a rough number on how things look year to year when the flu season starts again. But you can see the reports year over year. And I think it was it 17 that we had a very bad flu year, and so
yes, we had a very bad flu year in 2017. Yeah.
Even looking at that, it is nothing compared to the 12,000 lives lost, and that's making a lot of changes as well. Can you imagine if we didn't wear masks and do all those things? Still is.
And just to show you, and I'm sorry, Sel, if I sounded rude, I apologize. Just to look at I'm going to look at Will Humble right now, because I haven't done this yet, but he has. So this is a graph that Will Humble put together. This is the Arizona crude mortality rates by month that the AZDHS releases every single month, and we have all 5 years here. You can see all the other years sort of within an average of each other, right? They're all clustered in this one area. Yeah. Rate per 100,000 population. You can see, as here's our July. You can see the 2020, and this is just death. This is agnostic to COVID-19. And you can see our numbers are up near 120 for July, and they're up almost at 120 for December for 2020. So we obviously have a pretty high excessive death number, about 40 per 100,000 more than we would typically see in any given December from the last 5 years.
And I think when you're looking at the raw numbers in that, Garrett, I want to say it's about 15,000 more deaths this year, and we've had 12,000 of those attributed so far to coronavirus. So the numbers are right in line.
Exactly. This graph is completely agnostic to COVID-19. It doesn't care that COVID-19 exists. This is just people who died in Arizona. And although Arizona is a fast growing state, it doesn't grow that fast. So there has to be something else, a variable that is causing these numbers to increase the way they are. And we already know what that variable is. It's COVID-19. This is just something that we have to accept.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask you about that before too, because those raw numbers year over year were pretty fascinating. How close the numbers show up in that. All right. Let's see. Joanne writes, appointment system is a nightmare. They need to add pharmacies giving them the vaccines. They are. Joanne, you're exactly right. They're in the process of that. You can see the list of the pharmacy vaccination sites on AZDHS's site.
Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but they're showing up right now. If you're a certain age group, I believe there are some
over 75.
Yeah, 75. Yep. You can actually go to like a Target pharmacy or something, but there's a list of them on Maricopa County's website that you have to get with.
Yep. So those are the places. Again, they're not catering to all the groups. You know how we've had some set up at schools that are just for teachers or just for educators, and we've had the pharmacies that are set up for those over 75. That is the group that is allowed to go there. Okay. One last question. Linda's asking, what does that mean? Arizona is no longer the hotspot. It means we are no longer, how should I say it? Number one of spread.
New cases.
Yes.
New added cases in the world. So we were for about a week or so, Arizona has been the top hotspot of new cases per 100,000 being added to the system. So just anywhere in the world, we were adding more than them. And it looks like right now we're starting to, since our numbers are going down, we're starting to see that is no longer happening right now. We're number 2. Hopefully we continue to go down at this point. And hopefully everybody continues to go down. Obviously, we don't want to see anybody go up.
But it, as I said, is embarrassing when we're contributing.
Elizabeth has a great question. We don't have the answer to this, but can you ask Dr. Chris how often they are seeing an adverse reaction from the vaccine? Great question.
Yeah.
I think we can probably give an email to them, a call to them, and see if we can figure out if they have anything about that, because I haven't heard anything quite yet.
Yeah, most of the things that we've heard are people just having overwhelming nerves about getting it. Like they're so emotional about actually getting there and getting the shot. That's most of what we have seen in all of this. But I haven't seen any raw numbers.
The one thing that I've read is that because of the way that the vaccine is created, that you can't get COVID-19 from the vaccine. It's not an inoculation. It's not a low dose of COVID-19.
Right.
It's basically just replicating some of the proteins that they use to teach your antibodies to kill those proteins that are on that spike that is, we've all seen pictures of COVID-19 at this time, but we're all sick of seeing pictures of the virus.
Right.
And it's that the virus attacks the vaccine attacks those proteins. And so when they jab you, you're not actually getting COVID-19. You can't get it from them.
Right.
You have
it's not, it's
reaction, but you can't get COVID-19.
It's not in there. I love that you're saying jab, by the way, too. That is so very British of you. Okay, we're running out of time. I want to invite everybody back tomorrow, but also let you know where you can find us, other places. As I said, there's going to be a lot of reporting on the CDC's recommendations for schools coming up for you tonight. And if you miss any of our newscasts at 4, I can hear it starting out there right now. 4, 5, 6, 9 over on the CW and 10 back on ABC 15. You can find all of our coronavirus reporting on our website if you missed it. abc15.com/coronavirus. And you can find Garrett on Twitter. More conversation about that interesting poll that was posted there at Garrett_Archer if you want to read a little bit more about it. I'm on Twitter, mostly pictures of my kids in the snow in Phoenix. It's not snow, but grapple yesterday right now. But my Twitter account is at Katie Rammel. I'll get back to more news, back to more business, back to the work week very soon on that account. And then you can also find me on Facebook, since so many of you are joining us on here as well. Facebook.com/news from Katie. I believe that's it. We'll have even more time tomorrow, and we'll get back with you same time, same place. In the meantime, Garrett, glad you're feeling better. Glad your family's feeling better. And everybody else, keep that mask